Northeastern Ohio used to be a world economic powerhouse and has long been a home base of working-class Democrats. Times have changed somewhat, but one man is looking to bring the heartland back to the attention of an increasingly bi-coastal party. Congressman Tim Ryan joins us on Close Up. Thanks for being here, Congressman.
Thanks for having me.
So first of all, let's rewind to last week and the president's press conference. You know, this outside-the-box president, outside-the-norms president, really shocking Washington with what he said. What was your reaction?
It's really hard to believe. I mean, you sit and you watch him talk about completely racist behavior, aggressive murder, in this instance, many people maimed along the way, and he provides political cover for it. It is outrageous. I think every Republican needs to denounce what he has done. I mean, of course, Democrats are going to do it because that's the kind of world we're living in right now, but it's up to the Republicans right now. Republicans in New Hampshire, none who we've heard have condemned this. So I think it's important, whether it's in Ohio or New Hampshire, anywhere in the country, to condemn this kind of behavior and force the president to take a little bit of a stronger stand. What
about in your delegation? There are a lot of Republicans in Ohio. I'm sure we hear these private reservations expressed all the time. Is anyone closer to going public with a possible opposition?
You know, I've heard Steve Stivers from Columbus say this is pretty clear. That this is racist, and I don't even know why we're talking about defending this kind of behavior. That's the kind of leadership that we need on the Republican side, and there are many people out there, but they've got to speak up, because right now they're the only thing standing between Donald Trump and him throwing more gasoline on the fire, which is neo-Nazism. I mean, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about neo-Nazis. We're not talking about someone who may have a different position than you on abortion or guns or the economy or a traditional political issue that we have debates about. We're talking about neo-Nazism. I mean, are we really having this conversation? And for the president to, again, provide political cover, I think is completely outrageous.
Are you a little worried about what happens next?
Well, you know, I was on the congressional baseball team, you know, and we were practicing. I wasn't at the event, but we've seen up close how violent some of these people can get when incited one way or the other, one party or the other. But the problem with this is these organizations are founded on hate. You know, it's not a one-off person who just, you know, kind of lost it and went on and did something stupid. This is an organized effort, membership to an organization that is founded on hate and discrimination and thinking they're somehow superior to someone else. You know, that's ridiculous. And you do worry that because it has this institutional support now at the level of the White House, that, yeah, I mean, we're all concerned that something may happen.
So a lot of New Hampshire Democrats may have taken notice of you towards the end of 2016 when you made a bid for the leadership of the Democrats there in the House. You were saying essentially that the Democratic brand and former Speaker Pelosi, that brand is toxic. What do you mean by that? I mean, it's pretty direct, but I mean, what's the point you're trying to make?
Well, we've lost 1,000 state legislative seats across the country. You know, we control very few governor's mansions. Obviously, we lost the presidency, the House, the Senate, which then leads to the Supreme Court. So we've not done a very good job across the country in the last few years, and we've got to get back on message, and I think we are. We have come out with a plan that is a good first step. It's focused on economics. But we really have got to be a bold party, and a party that is talking about the economic interests of everyone in the country, regardless of you're white, you're black, you're gay, you're straight, you know, you're a man, you're a woman. The economic thrust of our country has got to improve and reach places like Youngstown, Ohio, and other places across the country. Democrats need to be advocating for that. We don't need to take a back seat on any of the other issues on equality and justice that we fought for, and we will continue to fight for. But what unites everybody is a strong economic message. And look, you know, whether it's in Manchester or in Youngstown, globalization, automation, we could either bury our head in the sand and say, boy, this world's, you know, coming to an end, like kind of Donald Trump is trying to make everybody afraid of it. Or what I want the Democrats to do is say, look, this is what's happening. How do we make it work? How do we make globalization work in Manchester and Youngstown, Ohio? How do we, you know, make automation and all the innovations that are happening around the country, how do we get them to create jobs in economically distressed areas that have seen a loss of manufacturing? There's a tidal wave coming in advanced manufacturing, 3D printing, all of these other areas, clean energy. Let's get an agenda together that drives this investment into places that have seen a decline in the last 30 years and begin the new American Renaissance in manufacturing.
What is the #1 policy that could be adopted, though, to make that change and bring those Manchesters, the Youngstowns, the Claremont, New Hampshires, the Akrons back up again?
Well, you're building an initiative, so it's kind of brick by brick, and I think it starts with making investments into infrastructure. But it needs to be 21st century infrastructure, so it needs to be high-speed broadband in every corner of the country, because if you want to do advanced manufacturing, you've got to have the broadband capability to download the advanced manufacturing files to be able to do the work to get into the supply chain of a Boeing or an Airbus or some other company. So you need the broadband, GPS, that kind of access. We need a new energy grid. We need one that's more secure, that's more efficient. The thing about those two job creators right now, those two investments, each could be a public-private partnership with the telecommunications company or the power companies. Those jobs can't be outsourced to China. Those are jobs that have to stay here in the United States. Those are the two basic foundations of the new economy. Then you move into clean energy. And when all of these communities can access that kind of broadband, access that kind of technology, have clean, efficient energy going into their communities, then you're going to see a lot of innovation spur up in different areas. I also have a proposal that I'm pushing really hard, is to get about 10% of the Washington, D.C. federal workforce put out into the country, into other areas. So if you take 300,000 federal workers, you take 30,000 of those workers, and you put 1,000 jobs in 30 different communities across the country that really need it, what a huge shot in the arm that would be in a downtown Manchester or Concord, or in a downtown Youngstown or Akron. 1,000 federal jobs, lease space, buildings, all the supply chain, and people retire in that community just to stabilize. And then you come in with the broadband, the energy grid, and build those technology companies up from there. But that's the kind of holistic plan I think we need.
This question of where the Democratic Party goes is obviously going to be played out through the primary process. You're here in New Hampshire, and you've been here before. You went to Franklin Pierce Law, which is now UNH Law, so you're familiar with the state. Are you someone we should be looking to come back here and sort of ignite this conversation about where the Democratic Party is going?
Oh yeah, I'll be back, and I've been here, and I've come here in the past a lot. Didn't get quite as much notice, but I went to law school here. I campaigned back in the late 90s here. I've been friends with Ray Buckley for a long time, who's the chair of the New Hampshire Democratic Party. And I really do want to play a major role in the country driving this kind of message, this hopeful, bold message that isn't fear-based. So I'm sure I'll be back here and in other places. You know, I was in Alabama, I went to Kentucky, I'm going to Indiana and West Virginia. I want to go to places where a lot of Democrats don't always go and say, look, we have a message for you. Democrats represent the whole country, and we want you to hear this message.
And to connect that thread back, do you think perhaps the key to unraveling some of this extremism, the hate, would be to make sure that the jobs are there, and then suddenly that dissipates a little bit? I mean, I know it's two different things, but if you can bring the economic prosperity back, sometimes that...
Yeah, I think everything's connected, and so a strong economy allows you to do well. In a down economy, you do end up having more issues, but this has been an underlying issue. Race and different kinds of discrimination has been in our country for a long time. The problem is when you have the CEO of the country, the President of the United States, who's been given quite a privilege to hold the most powerful office in the world, when you have him throwing gasoline on that fire, that changes the game. So regardless of economics or culture or any of these other things that we always are going to have to deal with, to have someone abuse their power in that way, I think is a major blow, and it keeps these kind of fires burning. But definitely economics. You know, I've always said the best social program is a job, and Democrats need to get back to that being our focus.
And more directly, you'll be back here. Do you think you might consider running for president?
I have no idea at this point, but we'll see. I mean, I like being out around the country. I like talking about this. I like crafting the message, and I think, you know, maybe the country needs somebody from a place like Youngstown, Ohio, that has really tried to develop the local economy at the local level, and, you know, we'll see where it goes.
All right, Congressman Tim Ryan, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. We'll see you back here.